Hello, this is the Insurance Perspectives podcast presented by HawkSoft, and today we have a special episode for you. May is National Mental Health Month, and I'm here on the 2025 HUG National Conference, HUG at Sea. I am excited to sit down with our keynote speaker, Dr. Elia Gourgouris, to talk about navigating conflict in the workplace. Dr. Elia is the president of the Happiness Center, an organization of world-leading experts in the field of positive psychology dedicated to creating personal success and happiness. He is also a founding partner at the Global Institute of Thought Leadership, an organization that brings together best-selling authors, world-renowned speakers, industry experts, and pioneering thinkers who all share a common goal, changing the world of ideas. Dr. Elia is the author of a #1 best-selling Amazon book, The 7 Paths to Lasting Happiness, which has been translated into Mandarin, Cantonese, and Greek. Dr. Elia was born and raised in Athens, Greece, where he became a national swim champion. He later then moved with his family to Santa Monica, California, when he was 10. He received his bachelor's degree in psychology from UCLA and then went on to receive his master's and Ph.D. in psychology. He is a mainstay of HawkSoft conversations these days, and it was my absolute pleasure to sit down with him and have a conversation about workplace conflict and resolution. We hope you enjoy the discussion, and be sure to follow the podcast on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks, Beach Ken. That was a great introduction. And back here in the past with me, Dr. Elia, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
I'm super excited to dive into this conversation. We're going to explore a topic that you presented on at the 2025 HUG National Cruise, which is workplace conflict and conflict resolution. Diving right in, I'd love to get your perspective on what is appropriate conflict in a professional workplace? Is there a bucket you can put that in?
I mean, I think conflict is part of human nature, so it's inevitable because we don't all think the same. So that's going to happen. The question is, how does it evolve from a full-blown confrontation that can get nasty and hurtful and mean-spirited to having a curious conversation? Because to me, if I have a conflict with you, the best approach is, tell me why you think that way. Like, I want to try to understand you versus like, let me tell you what I think, which is a very different energy, right? So that's the best approach to start off with.
Okay. Do you think, is there any inherent boundary that maybe owner of a business or key personnel or something, is there any boundary that they should be placing and saying like, hey, don't bring your sports team conflict into the office? Or is that maybe a little inoculation that helps with the bigger stuff?
To me, communication is so important in life, whether on a personal or professional level. So I don't have that many boundaries when it comes to that. And I personally, I'm a pretty open book. What you see is what you get. You like me, you don't like me, that's okay. I'm fine with either outcome, you know. If I start thinking about, okay, well, let's put that in this box and let's put that in that box and let's not touch that one, or let's walk on eggshells or whatever, I think it impedes the free flow of communication and it impedes the connecting with another human being. If we have, so I'm less boundaries. Some other people might say, well, that's personal versus professional, let's keep those two. But if you want to share something personal that you think will enhance the conversation and maybe perhaps make you more relatable, or you can have a common connection with the other person, that I think that's more important than actually thinking about how many boundaries and what kind of boundaries I should have.
Yeah. I think that's a really important perspective for people, because something that I've found in life is that when we put up those boundaries and those walls.
But that's the word, right?
Yeah.
We're putting up a wall.
Yeah, we're putting up a wall.
I'm for tearing down walls, basically, not building up more walls, so that's why.
Yeah, and I think it starts to harden you, like, and so it becomes the reflex. If you're saying like, oh, if I'm here, I'm not going to talk about this. If I'm there, I'm not going to talk about that. Then you start to me, it just becomes merged, and you're just like, then you can't have the direct, open conversation.
I mean, there's just such a thing as overshare. You talk about every minute detail about some personal issue that drags on for a while. I mean, that actually in some ways hijacks the conversation.
Sure.
But I think some personal sharing, especially from a leader's perspective, if you really want to connect it to your teams, I can't be like standoffish and like, oh, you know. And that became even more prevalent during the pandemic, because I worked with a lot of chief HR officers
Sure.
who at the time were struggling because their employees were working remote, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was coaching them, and like, don't get on the Zoom call and say, "Hey, how you doing?" Because most people are going to lie. They're like, "Fine, everything's fine, everything's good." Close the door and say, "Hey, I'm closing the door, just the two of us here. How are you really?" Like lean into the camera, a little camera. How are you really doing? And I said, if you want extra credit, share that. You know what? It's been really hard for me too not to be in the office. It's been really hard for me not to connect with people live and in person. So I'm kind of struggling too. I'm feeling the isolation. Sometimes a little depressed because we're not in the office all together. When you share that as a leader, guess what it does to the other person? I'm not alone. And there's a point of connectivity that way. So that kind of sharing, I think, is very vitally important.
Yeah.
And that's not oversharing. That's being vulnerable and being real.
Yeah, absolutely. And it demonstrates, I'm going to do this too. I don't just need it from you. I'm going to participate.
Yeah, or that I'm above this. Like everything's good in my life. How are you doing?
Yeah.
Like I'm doing. What are you going to say? Well, my life is fine too. You're probably going to lie versus being truthful and say, I'm really struggling. I miss my colleagues. I miss, seeing people in person. I miss the physical connection of being in one room together. I mean, that was during the pandemic. We're past that now. But I think there's some remnants of people sometimes are just, they don't want to be vulnerable. And vulnerability is a great attribute for people to have. Is it risky sometimes? Yeah, of course. It depends who you have across from you. But for the most part, when people are open and their hearts are open and they're vulnerable, that actually bonds you with somebody else. It doesn't detract from that.
Yeah.
It's not always easy. I'm saying that,
No, absolutely.
But you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I think that people they start to shy away from that uneasiness. They start to shy away from something that maybe it starts to feel like a little prickly, like a little painful, where they're just like, nah, I don't want to deal with this emotion. Like I cry easily, and so my natural reaction when that happens is to like pull back, because I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to embarrass myself, kind of thing. But what that means is I don't have a lot of flexibility, or I haven't like practiced the muscle, a lot of that vulnerability of that like pushing through and still making that connection. And so I completely agree with what you're saying.
But why is it embarrassing to be human?
Right? Oh, absolutely.
It's just a human emotion.
Yeah.
I mean, I can do keynotes all over the world. Sometimes if I tell a certain story, especially about my mom who passed away or whatever, and I get choked up, and I'll stop my talk for like 10, 15 seconds. I get choked up. I'm not going to like be bawling on stage. But you know what? Afterwards, people say, when you stop, that was the moment that they felt something.
Yeah.
Like I felt your connection to your mom. I felt what you were talking about. It was so real. Why would I want to deny that? If that emotion comes up, it comes up. There's a reason why it's coming up.
Yeah.
Right? It's not the end of the world. And I don't find it embarrassing. I feel like it's brave and or courageous for someone to show some kind of emotion, even publicly. That's not the end of the world. People actually love that in the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. There's a recent example. There's a great basketball player, Luka Doncic.
Yes.
Famously, if you're a Mavericks fan, you're mourning the loss. If you're a Lakers fan like me, I'm like, yes, we got Luka for the next 10 years. The Lakers went and played in Dallas for the first time since the trade, a few weeks ago. And of course, the Mavericks had a tribute on screen before the game started. And Luka started to cry. Like we're talking about like millions of people are watching this game because they want to see. You know what everybody said the next day? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That he was so real. And then he goes out and scores 45 points.
Yeah.
Like amazing. So my point is that he used that energy.
Yeah.
He got emotional.
Yeah.
And then he used it to perform at peak performance.
Yeah.
Right? So getting in touch with your emotions is not a bad thing. And if it's a little bit outside your comfort zone, that's where growth lies, though.
Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
okay, though, when it happens.
How would you respond to somebody that would say, but I don't want that type of emotional display in the workplace?
But again, I think it's tempered. Like we're not talking about somebody bawling, screaming, like, the whole, the 3 stories up, I can hear somebody. We're talking about someone who sometimes like, this really touched me. The fact that you were vulnerable with our team touched me. I didn't even know you were going through this. Anything that brings us closer together, and if somebody's really that uncomfortable about that, who has the issue? The one that's shared?
Absolutely.
or the one that was like uncomfortable with those feelings because they're not in touch with their own feelings or they couldn't do it.
You had mentioned leadership and a leader in the workplace, and I'm very curious from your perspective, who is responsible for resolving conflict in a workplace?
I think we all are. The question is, how is the conflict resolved? Is it like, I'm the boss, I pay the bills, do as I say, or is it more collaborative? It's like, even as a leader, you have you have a vision for your company, you have a vision for your team, and so on. Explain it clearly, because it's far too often meetings end, and people walk out the door, and they're not all sure. They're not on the same page, though. Well, I thought you said this. No, I don't think that's what he said. I think he meant that. It's like, no. So clear communication up front will avoid any future conflict. If it's clouded, mixed, uncertain, and people walk away within a few days, here's what that's not what I asked, because it wasn't clear. So I feel like we can do some pre-work before we get to the conflict stage, because then it's almost like crisis management too. Right? And I think curiosity is the key. If you don't understand something or understand someone or where they're coming from, ask them, where are you coming from? Like, I really don't get where you're coming from. But I can say it with judgment, like, what are you, an idiot? Or I can say, I really don't understand where you're coming from, explain it to me. Most people, if you give them that opening, they'll say, well, this is where I'm coming from. And once you have that information, you can either agree with it, or even if you disagree with it, at least I see where he's coming from. I happen not to agree with him, but at least I understand him. Because human beings have two great needs. The greatest needs to be loved. That's universal. You know what the second greatest need is? To be understood. And if you ever had like lunch with somebody and you walk away and say, man, that person totally gets me. How good does that feel?
Oh, amazing.
That's right. So at the very least, conflict is not the end of the world. Actually, out of conflict, great things can happen. But it's the understanding without judgment.
Understanding without judgment.
That's key, right?
So what happens, I feel like this is a scenario that we see a lot in our world today. What if you cannot get to that place of understanding? What if there's just fundamental differences?
Understanding that, okay, I think we're confusing two things.
Sure.
Understanding someone doesn't mean I have to agree with them. It just means that I get where they're coming from. I mean, we live in a divided states of America. And the world is the same way. So, and people, rather than talking to one another, trying to understand where they're coming from, are vilifying one another. And they're getting louder. And the adjectives they're using, they're getting even more absurd, on the left or the right. Versus like, okay, tell me why you support the president or you don't support the president. And that doesn't make you a bad person. You're not evil because either way you go. You're not, if one is a patriot, the other one is not a patriot. Those are absurd statements. We're all Americans. We all love this country. We have differences of opinions. And at this point, they're more exacerbated perhaps. But if we don't talk with curiosity, this is going to get worse.
Coming back to like a workplace conflict, let's say that I'm having a conflict with a colleague about how to accomplish something, and we're just at a point where we keep talking over each other. We can't, impeding all progress on the project. Is it helpful if a third party steps in to moderate or to help us?
And I do that all the time, by the way. Yeah, I come in when there's conflict resolution. Like they've tried to do it on their own. They're not seeing eye to eye. As a matter of fact, it's getting worse. Like you said, now we're getting louder. As if I get louder, like somehow my point is going to come across. No, it makes the other person even more defensive, so they get louder. Getting loud doesn't work. That doesn't solve anything. So yeah, I mean, absolutely. Whether it's somebody internal or somebody external, you bring in somebody and say, hey, this team is like, there's great potential, but there's a lot of infighting, and they're not getting along, and they're not executing, the vision from the owner. So we need some. Yeah. So I think sometimes it's necessary, and that's okay though, because somebody from the outside, even if it's not a member of the company, doesn't have any like, with this faction. I want this faction to go to. They're just looking at it saying, how can we all win? And I always approach that. It's like, if I come in and I only take your side and just vilify the other person, well, that's not conflict resolution. You're just using power, basically, to subdue somebody else. And as you know, when that happens, what happens to that other person? They start getting resentful.
Yeah.
And they start undermining, even silently sometimes, because they know I can't, it's not safe for me to speak,
Yeah.
but I'm going to do it under, and like being disengaged. They start tuning out. They're physically showing up, but mentally and emotionally, they're not even in the building.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We don't want that in the workforce. And given that 77% of people right now are disengaged from their, think about that. That's almost 8 out of 10 workers, employees are disengaged.
Yeah.
That's a huge amount. We're not talking about 20%, we're talking about 80%.
Yeah.
Which means only 20% are coming in and actually doing the work, fully engaged.
Yeah.
That's a horrible statistic. Even in baseball, that's a horrible statistic. If you take any other, like if you only made 20% completions, you'd be fired.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Okay, that's, okay. So we have to change that.
Yeah. I'm going to circle back around on that one because I have one more question on, I have two more questions on workplace conflict. In a workplace, in a team, in a business, should you be striving for this harmonious environment where there is no conflict? Or is it okay for someone to seek out that compassion and understanding, but still recognize that, hey, these personalities are going to generate conflict over the lifetime of our working together, and that's something that we can tolerate because it produces some results or something?
But it depends what it produces, though.
Gotcha.
Does it produce more angst, more infighting, more undermining, more, backstabbing more, or does it actually produce results? Because I think conflict, if it's handled properly, I think you can have great results. And to get two people that at the beginning of the meeting were like on opposite ends, come together somewhere in the middle where there's some kind of compromise and understanding, and then they move forward to successfully achieve whatever the outcome was, it's great.
Yeah.
Versus just having everybody like head down. I had a leader that once said, "I don't want order takers." And I'm like, "What do you mean by that?" Well, I don't want yes men or yes women in my. I want people to challenge. I want people to say, "Have you ever thought about doing it this way, boss?"
Yeah.
Which takes some courage. But if a leader is confident and content within themselves, they will go around the whole table and ask, "What do you think about this? What do you think about it? Tell me, what are your thoughts?" Well, that's an interesting perspective. That's different. None of us had thought about it that way, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to stifle that.
Absolutely.
And, there are people who are just very independent thinkers. They think outside of the box. Some of the greatest leaders, Steve Jobs, kind of awkward, different.
Yep.
He revolutionized this world because he thought differently. And if you remember him, he got fired by Apple because he was so far ahead.
Yeah.
They didn't even know, where's this guy coming from? This is ridiculous. And then they hired him back and he built the first $1 trillion company in the world. Why? Because he thought outside of the box. If he thought like anybody else, Elon Musk, I know he's controversial right now, but he clearly thinks outside of the box in everything that he has created and continues to create. You don't want to stifle that kind of creativity by saying, well, you got to toe the line 100%.
Yeah.
No, toe the line, but not 100%.
Yeah.
Like, otherwise, you leave no room for creativity and innovation.
Absolutely.
Right? Because innovation is where it's at. And honestly, I want to brag a little bit about the United States of America. We are the top in the world when it comes to innovation. So everybody, outside the world, America is going down, and all that stuff. Every empire falls. You hear all these like gloom and doom statements about America. Every time they think on the outside that this country is dead, dying on its way out, there's some other innovation that takes place that changes the entire planet.
Yeah.
And that's the reason for that is because here, at least, there's the idea like best idea wins. We don't care where it comes from.
Yeah.
If you have leaders like that, I don't care if it comes 4 levels down on the organizational chart. If it's a great idea, you win.
Yeah.
Because it benefits everybody.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I don't have all the answers as a leader. Do I have all the answers about everything? That would be absurd.
Oh, absolutely.
There's no leader that has all the answers about everything. So the people that allow communication to flow in and out without judgment, that doesn't mean I have to do everything, whatever my subordinates say.
Yeah.
But I'm going to take it under advisement. Especially if I hadn't thought about it. It's like, let's see how that works.
Yeah. There's a saying in business that comes up a lot that, we can disagree, but at the end of the day, we have to commit.
Right.
Is that a perspective that you agree with? Like, how should people be thinking about what disagreement is? What is that? Because we could we could disagree on the fastest way to get from one end of this ship to the other.
Right.
But if we commit to one of them, at least we're going to get to the other end.
I agree 100%.
But is there something, I guess in the answer you just gave, the disagreement or the commitment after disagreement can't be, well, we've said our piece, it doesn't matter, we'll do what the leader says. That disagreement and the commitment at the end, the commitment has to be found in compromise?
I think so. Because otherwise, then you're not doing anything. Then you're stuck. You're in limbo.
Yeah.
Nobody's making any decision. There's no steps forward towards resolving the conflict, the issue, right? So to me, I'm always about the whole idea of conflict resolution is the second word. The conflict exists. That's part of human nature. But the resolution is the key. Otherwise, why would it bring me in? Right? Because then you're stuck and you're spinning your wheels. And then what happens is employees get more disengaged that way.
Yeah.
Well, nothing ever changes. You know how many times I've heard, at the end of the year we have an employee questionnaire, or what do they call it?
Yeah.
A review.
A workplace survey or something like that.
Survey. When you talk to the actual people, like between you and I, nothing ever changes here. Yeah, I'm just going through the motions, feeling it, because nothing ever changes. We don't want that in an organization.
Absolutely, yeah.
We want, like, when people say something, especially if there's a consensus amongst the majority, we need to take a look at that. Is it uncomfortable sometimes? Of course it is.
Yeah.
But again, growth only takes us out of our comfort zone.
Yeah.
And we call it that because it's comfortable.
Yep,
and we like it, but it's not enough. We got to step outside of that, and that's where conflict comes in sometimes.
Yeah.
It's not comfortable, but necessary at times.
Yeah.
It depends how it's resolved. To me, that's the thing.
What is a pitfall in resolution that people should be avoiding in conflict? What is something that is maybe a false resolution to an issue?
I think the expectation that I'm going to get everything I want. Because if I get everything I want, you get nothing of what you want.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not long term. At least that doesn't work.
Yeah.
It may work short term because I have power over you, because I'm two positions above you, and do it because I say so.
Yeah.
But that doesn't work long term. So even me as a leader, let's say I have to compromise a little bit. I say, okay, I can see that. It's okay. Give them a win.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at the big picture.
Yeah.
And if you give them this small win, what I get back in return is like a team that's functioning, that's connected, that's collaborative, right? If I do it my way or the highway, I shut them down.
For the audience, for our audiences listening that maybe runs an insurance agency or runs a business, I think being the CEO, you gotta give first, maybe, because you're setting that example. Okay, I have one more predetermined question for you.
Okay.
Many of our insurance agencies are family businesses that will blend a professional environment with a family environment. And, I've seen examples where it's very messy. What are some strategies for navigating that type of complex team dynamic where family is involved?
It's not easy. It's not easy because it's not just the issues that are work-related. There are issues that happen before 8 a.m. or that have happened after 6 p.m. at home. So to have those kind of boundaries, like, hey, let's not bring that into this is just work. It's not an easy thing when it's family. We have to be honest about that.
Yeah.
If it was easy, then everybody would do it without any conflict whatsoever. But so you have to be aware. To be awareness is key. Like, know thyself. Just us getting to know one another, and basically to have an agreement. It's like, and this is where boundaries are important.
Yeah.
There's some things that I think this is the family stuff. We'll just take it outside. Not in front of the team.
Yeah.
And let's not poison. Especially, let's say you had a rough morning with your wife, and your wife is your partner.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't want to bring that to the first thing in the morning. So that's something that it's our responsibility to make sure. Okay, let's separate a little bit of those two things.
Yeah.
And when you work together, that's why a lot of times say, never be partners with a family member. There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Because if it goes south, it impacts a lot.
Yeah.
So
You have to be mindful about it.
be mindful about it.
And I think a lot of insurance professionals, they're getting to that stage where they are mindful about it. But, grandparent opened the business, child inherited, third generation's now inheriting.
And the one did a little bit differently than what,
Yep.
that's real.
Yeah.
That's absolutely real. But it's also, for the founder to recognize, you know what? I built this company, I blood, sweat, and tears, and I handed it off to my kids and now their grandkids. It's their time now.
Yeah.
Like, I've done my part, and I'm just here to enjoy them and support them in whatever way I can, and really not interfere all that much anymore.
Yeah.
That's a wise founder of a business. You know?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I have enjoyed this conversation immensely. During your keynote, you gave us homework to start thinking about some daily gratitude.
Yes.
I have my first name, Gabriel, who helped us. He was our waiter at the hotel that we stayed at before we came on the ship.
Nice.
And he helped make sure that a bunch of us got to eat together. Still thinking about 2 more. I have them in my head. I just didn't get their names, which I feel very bad about. So I need to go back in the ship and find some folks that have been really helpful. I'm grateful for your time today and just getting to pick your brain on this subject and also just get to chat. Thank you so much, Dr. Elia, for joining us.
You know, and I'm grateful for HawkSoft. You know, I've said this publicly. I'll say it again. The first time we met, when you asked me to speak 4 years ago in Orlando, I felt like home, and I still feel like home. It's like I haven't seen you guys, some of you guys, for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And it's so great to be back here. And so thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. We are happy to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thanks. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Thank you for watching today's episode. Click the episode description below to learn more about our guests and to view the latest podcast episode, as well as other content from HawkSoft. We appreciate you watching and hope you join us next time on the Insurance Perspectives podcast. Thank you.